7 stores that vanished. One was my favorite, and Dad took me there every Saturday. Every Saturday, my dad would take me by the hand. We'd cross the footpath, and there it was, Lyle's Milk Bar, its wooden doors giving a soft creak. I'd push the door and a sweet smell would greet us. Butter, fresh bread, milk. The little bell would chime. That was the start of our ritual morning. Today, that door is shut. In its place, silence. But did the sound die? Or is it just asleep inside our memories? The era was the late 70s, suburban Australia on the fringes of the big cities. Lyle's wasn't just a milk bar or a corner cafe. It was a meeting place. Dad, a manual worker, would finish early on Saturdays. He'd take me there, buy a few loaves, a milkshake, chat with the owner, nod to the neighbours. For me, it was a weekly excursion. For him, maybe a moment of peace. You watching this, did you have a place like that too? A little corner that called to you, without big promises, but stood there, steady, so you could lean on it? I remember Mr. Lyle slipping my bag of bickies into the paper sack, always with a cheers, mate, see you next time. He'd look at me with something almost fatherly, not just the shop owner, but a local guardian of that calm morning. But life changes. Shopping centres grow. Competition turns ruthless. One day, a sign went up, closed for good. And with it, a gap opened between present and past, and part of us stayed on the other side. But Lyle's wasn't alone in that quiet farewell. Across Australia, so many places that were emotional pathways for generations simply ceased to exist. And they've got stories to tell as well. Mark Foy's, Sydney. Mark Foy's was a palace of retail, chandeliers, grand staircases, displays dressed to perfection. For decades, it was a family day out. You dressed up to go to Mark Foy's. It was an experience. Impromptu catwalks in the corridor, music floating in the background. But years later the buildings were repurposed, competition sharpened, shopping centres took over, and Mark Foy's disappeared. How did yesterday's elegance become dusty memories? Anthony Horden and Sons, Sydney. It was impossible to walk through Sydney CBD and not feel the imposing presence of Anthony Horden and Sons. The building was a palace of red brick, sweeping staircases, lifts with golden trim that gave the softest groan between floors. The soundscape was hurried footsteps, families murmuring, and gentle instrumental music washing over it all. There was something magical about stepping inside, the leather scent drifting from the handbag section, the luster of the chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, and that thick carpet that swallowed the sound of your own steps. I'll duck into Horden's and grab what I need, people would say. But it was never just that. It was almost ceremonial, a way of carrying yourself with a bit of grace in the world. And when the building was demolished, it wasn't only bricks that vanished. It was the end of a time when shopping was an experience, not merely a transaction. George's, Melbourne. George's wasn't a shop. It was an extension of Melbourne's identity. Founded in 1880, it smelt of polished timber, French perfume, and tissue paper. Staff wore white gloves. The hush inside was respectful, almost sacred. It was the sort of place where you walked slowly, touched fabrics with reverence and, even if you bought nothing, left feeling you'd lived something special. Women in hats moved between mannequins dressed to the nines. Men in long coats waited for their wives in the tea room, sipping Earl Grey from China with gilded rims. When George's closed in 1995, Melbourne lost more than a shop. It lost a ritual of elegance and contemplation. A heavy quiet fell on the city, not for the lack of noise, but for the absence of what made people feel part of something finer, more dignified. Franklin's, nationwide. Franklin's wasn't fancy, and maybe that's why it was so loved. It was the supermarket for ordinary folks, where you'd race down the aisles with your runners squeaking on the polished floor, beg mum for a packet of *** no-frills *** chips, and help push the trolley, even if it wobbled. The signage was simple, shelves stacked high, checkouts chiming with that unmistakable rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. There was comfort in it. Franklin's was part of routine, survival, and affection. Remember counting out coins to see if you could afford that chockey? It was there, at Franklin's Big Fresh, that small victories of childhood were won. When the last store shut in 2015, it felt like an old friend had moved overseas. No notice, no proper goodbye. Olympic Hot Donuts, Footscray, Victoria. You'd step out of Footscray station and be wrapped at once in the sweet scent of hot jam. The Olympic Hot Donuts van looked small, but it loomed large in the memories of everyone who passed by. Mr. Nick, at his clattering machine, would hand over donuts with sugar-dusted hands, and a smile sweeter than the glaze. It was a compulsory stop. Kids on the way to school, workers heading home, couples splitting a donut on the bench. The first bite scorched your tongue, but no one whinged. It was the taste of haste, routine, everyday happiness. When the van closed in 2017, it wasn't just a stall that was lost. It was the end of a living, spontaneous tradition, made of sugar and humanity. Birchall's, Tasmania. Walking into Birchall's was like slipping into a parallel universe. Everything smelt of new paper, fresh ink, and old wood. The floors creaked, the shelves seemed endless, and each aisle led you to some new curiosity. Exercise books with decorated covers, fountain pens, school texts with striking illustrations. It was a temple for students, a shelter for daydreamers. Teachers lingered for hours picking supplies. Kids got lost in the art section. It was more than a bookshop. It was the beginning of many futures. In 2017, when it shut for want of a buyer, the news was treated like just another statistic. But for those who knew Birchall's, it was a quiet farewell to the pleasure of discovering the world inside a shop. Ray's Outdoors. Ray's felt different. It smelt of new canvas, rubber from gumboots and waterproof fabric. The stores looked like adventure parks, tents pitched, packs hanging, torches flickering. It's where families went before a camping trip, where mates plotted hikes, where dreams of escaping the city took shape. You could spend hours there, picturing every trail you'd tackle, each night under the stars that hadn't happened yet. Buying something at Ray's wasn't just gearing up, it was stepping toward the wild, the natural, the free. When the stores began to close, that spirit of freedom faded from the high streets as well. Ray's became a memory, but its tents still echo somewhere between scrub and remembrance. Lyle's lost its golden days too, but it still survives in memory. What do all these stories share? That it wasn't only facades that disappeared. What vanished were meetups, family rituals, belonging. Lyle's may have become a shuttered shopfront, but in its prime, it was safe harbour. Mark Foy's, George's, Horton's, they were more than shops, they were part of Australia's emotional landscape. Today, their buildings, their windows, their names persist as shadows in the collective. When someone says, "My dad took me there every Saturday," it isn't just a nostalgic line. It's a memory being inked that still beats. And for each person out there, there's a place that shone, that had a strong presence, and that now lives only in photos, stories, recollection. Can I ask you to close your eyes? Imagine the bell's little chime, the smell of warm bread, a child's laugh rising from the back of the shop. Imagine you're walking that footpath and time slips back. The door opens. You're there again. If this video gave you a pinch of Sound Aid, that ache for what's gone, then you're already living the purpose of this channel. You're part of this mission to recover Australia's lost chapters. If you feel like retelling your own memory, drop it in the comments, send through old photos, do it. Let's bring back the sounds, smells and faces that time keeps trying to nudge into forgetfulness. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, not just for new videos, but so no memory turns out the lights. The next episode is already in the works. We are off to another lost place that speaks to so many hearts. And remember, while we hold on, nothing's ever truly closed.